What is the meaning of life? Many people will give you many different answers. Even more people won't have an answer. I fall somewhere in between. I have an idea of what life's meaning is, but I'm unsure if my interpretation is correct. To be blunt, it probably isn't, which is okay because I'm still quite young by the end of the day. To me, however, life's meaning comes from being able to enjoy the small moments in life, both on your own and with the subject of this video. Relationships are something I take incredibly seriously. Part of why I've never had a romantic relationship is because it's something I want to do right. Friendships, I'd argue, are more important than many people make them out to be. Despite being a socially awkward nerd, I've had an extremely close group of friends since I became a teenager, and these are still people I hang out with frequently. Hell, they'll be my goddamn roommates soon. Despite the fact that I'm very introverted and often enjoy spending my time alone, not having any connection is enough to drive anyone insane. My biggest regret during the pandemic was not seeing my friends more often. My social needs were fulfilled just fine since I'm very close with my family members, but friendships are different. With family members, the agreement is that you can generally trust them until they give you a reason not to. With a friend, however, you have to earn that trust in them. And that's what makes such a bond so important. The moment you feel truly connected with a friend is one of the most satisfying moments you can have in life. I find that anime, despite being a medium that portrays familial and romantic relationships very strongly, often struggles to capture the sheer joy of friendship. Thankfully, there's an entire genre dedicated to friendships in CGDCT, but that still leaves male friendships underrepresented. That's why Kaoru Hanawa Rinto Saku stood out so much to me as the most relatable portrayal of friendship I've seen in any anime or manga. The manga stars Rintaro Tsumugi, a gentle giant who's been socially ostracized for his intimidating appearance. As a kid, he quickly accepted that no one would accept him. While that allowed him to express himself properly through his appearance and hobbies, it also halted his social life. That was until he entered high school, where he befriended Ayato, Saku, and Usami. When the manga begins, the characters are all second-year students who have known each other for roughly a year. This is enough time for Rintaro to enjoy his time with them, but not enough for him to fully trust them. Funnily enough, it's not his friends that change his mindset, but rather his love interest Kaoru Waguri. Kaoru is someone who's been highly impacted by Rintaro's kindness, and it's as a result of this that she falls for him. While Rintaro has a more pessimistic personality, Kaoru is the embodiment of a ray of sunshine. It's through being engulfed in her endless positivity that Rintaro starts to reconsider his friendships. In Kaoru-hana, Rintaro and Kaoru are split by their schools, Kaoru's school having a deep-rooted discrimination toward Rintaro's school. Rintaro is well aware of the risks he'd take by being with Kaoru, but he still wants to apply what he's learned through her. He wants to introduce someone as important as Kaoru to his friends, and when he's finally able to do so, Rintaro realizes something. As his friends don't question anything for even a second, fully accepting the choice he made, everything becomes quite clear. This whole time, he's been taking his friends for granted. Because of how heartbreaking After Story is, many people forget that CLANNAD is just as funny as it is sad. While most arcs go over very serious subject matter, the one form of levity within each route is in Tomoya's friendship with Tsunohara. While Tsunohara is mostly just a punching bag for every character to make fun of, the way Tomoya views him is something that's very important to understanding his character as a whole. Tomoya and Tsunohara are both very similar people. Both of them are delinquents who show up late, sleep in class, and have their dreams ruined at the snap of a finger. Tsunohara is a lazy, hedonistic idiot who has accepted that his life will never amount to anything. Tomoya and Tsunohara are friends because they're in the same position, but Tomoya, unlike Tsunohara, is not content with his life. Every time Tomoya messes with Sunohara, it's not only for the sake of a good laugh, but also a reflection of Tomoya's self-hatred. There are two routes in the visual novel that explore this concept. The most important of these is in Mei's route, where Tomoya has to confront these feelings instead of bottling them up with practical jokes. It's only through fighting out their differences that the two can actually grow closer together. A similar result is found in Komura's route, where we find out that it was through his kind actions that Tomoya and Sunohara first became friends. While CLANNAD is most well known for the relationships that Tomoya is able to form through Nagisa, many people don't realize how important the friendship he made before her is. This all culminates in the secret Sunohara route of the visual novel, where Tomoya professes his love for Sunohara after rejecting every girl he encounters. Ignore the fact that this is obviously intended as a joke route, as it's actually quite important. It's the true moment where Tomoya realizes something. This whole time, he's been taking his friend for granted. As I've said before, I'm very close with my friends, but it wasn't always that way. I have two friends who I'm close with. I met Andrew when I was 9 years old, and one of our teachers told us that we should try to talk to each other. Unexpectedly, we hit it off, and we've been friends for over a decade now. It wouldn't be until I turned 13 that Josh would join the friend group. We had gotten along the year prior as fellow outcasts, and the next year he decided to start joining us at lunch. Little did we know, but we hit it off so well that Andrew and I became his primary friends. During the vast majority of my school years, I only really saw my friends as people to pass the time with. I enjoyed their company, but it never really went any further than that. For the first several years of knowing them, I just assumed we'd eventually part ways like most school friends seem to. That was until two events happened in my life that permanently changed the ways I thought about friendship.
So I was sitting in my cubicle today and I realized ever since I started working, every single day of my life has been worse than the day before it. So that means that every single day that you see me, that's on the worst day of my life.
While not from an anime, that clip from Office Space would perfectly encapsulate my feelings every time I'd enter school. Combine that with a chaotic family life that had only gotten more dramatic with the years, and I truly felt alone. My friends already knew about my depression. It's not like I could do a good job of hiding it when I like using comedy to cope with difficult things. It was as a result of this cope, however, that I subconsciously told myself that my friends don't want to see me be vulnerable. But eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I just broke down, hiding myself in the bushes of a park. I expected the worst when they saw me crying and complaining, but that's not what happened. To my surprise, they opened up to me as well, and it was the first time where I really felt like I actually knew them for who they were. Not too long after, my special ed teacher pulled us out of class to give us a life lesson, and what he told me that day has never left my mind since. I told Josh this last period, so I want to tell you two as well. Most people have buddies, people who they can talk to pass the time at school. Few people have friends. If you're driving and end up in a ditch, a buddy isn't going to save you. A friend will. You two have friends. Promise me that after school, you three will stick together. That was my favorite teacher I've ever had. Someone I could trust and relate with due to our shared autism diagnosis, and he was my special ed teacher for a full 4 years as a result. It's safe to say that I trusted his judgment a lot. I'm glad I trusted it too, because Josh and Andrew are two of the best people in my life. After all this transpired, I decided to write a novel while I was bored in class. I didn't really have any strong intentions for it, but I enjoyed writing it, and it eventually kept growing in scale. While Be Yourself, Ayane-chan is marketed as a romance between a man who can't love and a woman who can't express her love, my novel isn't just a romance. Yuki's friendships are a very important part of the story. Sato and Satoshi intentionally have similar names to mirror the ways in which they deal with many of the same struggles. This is despite their severe differences in personality. While Yuki is a cynic who only hangs out with the two because it'd be more exhausting to push them away, Sato and Satoshi are both extremely serious and passionate people. Satoshi is a hard-working study freak who wants everything around him to meet his strict, rule-abiding standards. Sato, on the other hand, is a rule-breaking delinquent with an immense talent and passion for acting. Passion is as equally responsible for their arguments as it is for their unity. Part of having that passion comes in how seriously they take their relationships. While that passion is predictably expressed in different ways, it's also what causes a grudge in them to form when Yuki, someone who hardly puts any thought into the girl he'd confessed to, manages to get into that relationship simply by asking her. When Yuki and Ayane succeed as a couple, that's when the friction truly begins to start. Yuki's character arc isn't just about learning how to love, but also appreciating what he has. The nuance of his confrontations with his friends come in how they're both wrong. Yuki was wrong to not appreciate them, to see them as disposable. Sato and Satoshi were wrong to let their jealousy and opposing worldviews boil into such vitriolic hatred. But as men do, they fight their differences, and grow to open up to each other afterward. But why would I even bring up my own story? Well, it's because writers tend to write what they know. While every character in Be Yourself Ayane-chan is meant to represent a different aspect of myself, Yuki being the protagonist was a very intentional choice. Sure, Ayane's anxieties, Sato's rebellious passion, and Satoshi's desire for order may be a bigger aspect of my identity than my cynicism, but fighting that cynicism was a massive part of what I was fighting to stop at the time. Self-acceptance is the primary theme that Be Yourself Ayane-chan tackles. The novel is named after Ayane because her shy personality makes her journey to self-acceptance the easiest to understand. Yuki's journey to self-acceptance, however, isn't as clear-cut. While Ayane merely needed reassurance, Yuki needed self-reflection. For Yuki to accept himself, he needed to accept the fact that he was wrong to treat the people around him the way he did. It was only after falling in love with Ayane that Yuki could finally come to the ultimate realization. This whole time, he's been taking his friends for granted. Funnily enough, it wasn't until after I finished the first draft of my novel that I had seen CLANNAD and read Kaoru Hana. It's funny to think about now, given how eerily similar my novel is to CLANNAD, with a plot structure of helping people overcome their problems, to a similar romantic dynamic, to even Ayane's parents being very similar to Nagisa's. Instead of running away from these similarities, I embraced them in my second draft. When watching CLANNAD, I really resonated with Tomoya and Sunohara's friendship. While I couldn't relate to using my friends as punching bags the way Tomoya does, I could very much relate to the feeling of distance they had. That's why the fight between them is one of the most slept-on moments in CLANNAD. Neither of them are perfect, but they are perfect for each other. I didn't start reading Kaoru Hana until a year after I finished my novel, and it gave me a different perspective on Rintaro's relationships. Ayato, Saku, and Osami are all very open people who are willing to be vulnerable with each other. Part of being a figure like that, however, requires you not to put pressure on your friend. Little did I know that I had friends like them the entire time, and I didn't find out until only a few years ago. Through my own life experiences, I can say for certain just how hard it is to come to that realization. Despite knowing how his friends feel about him early on, it isn't until a few more chapters that Rintaro truly puts it together. These are people who know him, or at least want to know him. They're not gonna judge his baking hobby or his girlfriend. As this so closely mirrors my own life, it always makes me appreciate how realistically written Kaoru Hana is. Seeing this friendship grow has really been similar to seeing my friendships grow, as we continue to learn more about each other. As the weeks go by, some of them face new challenges, find new goals, and learn new things about the world, just like me and my friends have. Early on, the manga makes it abundantly clear why these four will stick with each other for the rest of their lives, and reading it only made me more assured of my own friendships. I remember when I first started work at what's now my last job. While assembling food for the company, I get the same question many times. Aiden, what are your hobbies? I hate this question, not only because I don't like talking about my hobbies when so few people share them, but also because it's just such a backwards way of understanding someone. I hate how embarrassing this will sound, but it was using Discord that taught me this lesson. On Discord, you can find people who share your hobbies at the drop of a hat. In this given scenario, every person you'd meet in a Discord server would always be your friend. Then, how come there are people who share my hobbies, but not my values or sensibilities? Persona 5 illustrates this point very well. Throughout the game, Joker's hobbies are never made explicit, but I wouldn't call him a boring character by any means. Despite his silent nature, he's still a character with a very defined goal, motivation, and mentality, with a cheeky sense of humor to boot.
I'm a dad.
Okay.
The Phantom Thieves aren't such close friends because they share a hobby, but rather because they share a goal, a motivation, and a mentality. That's why such wildly different characters are able to fit into the group so neatly. This is why I can relate to the Phantom Thieves more than a school club anime, just for an example. When I was in school, it wasn't the people in my choir or theater clubs that I became friends with, it was the people who understood how it felt to be a social outcast. It's as the result of this that I don't even mind being an introvert. Sure, I may be bad at making new friends, but the fact that I have friends at all is an enormous benefit. On YouTube, I find myself stumbling across videos where fairly average people vent over their lack of friendship, but none of these are my favorite videos on friendship. That title would have to go to Bart Philosophy's video going over what friendship actually means. In the video, he discusses Aristotle's 3 categories of friendship. A friendship of pleasure is someone you enjoy the company of, but would never open up to. Think of this as a coworker. A friendship of utility is someone you enjoy the usefulness they bring to your life. If you have someone you keep in contact with whenever you need an oil change, then that about sums up what it is. A friendship of virtue, however, is someone who you trust on an instinctual level, with the mutual understanding that you'd both go out of your way to help each other no matter what. Obviously, one of these categories is more important than the rest. I find that many of the people who make videos about their lack of friendship were people who were never able to build friendships of virtue before adulthood. It's always so weird watching videos like these because of how easily I could have ended up just like these people. Perhaps the best feature of a modern Persona game is the social link system, one which Persona 5 renamed to the Confidant system. While the name change is probably really annoying for those who have played 3 and 4 first, I do understand why they changed it. While the social links of Personas 3 and 4 generally played out more like a typical friendship, Confidants aren't that way. When Joker starts a Confidant, he's not starting a friendship of pleasure, but rather a friendship of utility. Further supporting this idea is how Persona 5 is the first game in the series where social links grant you special abilities in combat. When going through the story of a Confidant then, they generally tend to follow a formula. Your Confidant will start cold, treating the relationship as purely transactional. For Joker to advance the Confidant, he can't tell them what they need to hear to improve their lives, but rather reiterate what they want to hear. Even in an exception like EY, who wants you to be blunt with him, he's still very distrusting of you. Yoshida is the only real exception to this pattern as a result. This means that it isn't until you advance these Confidant stories that the characters truly begin to open up to you. When Joker can actually start to help them, that's when those real bonds of trust can truly arise. In all the modern Persona games, there's a mechanic tied to social links called the Arcana Burst, where deepening a social link will give your Personas more experience after a fusion. I love what this mechanic says about the various protagonists, as these bonds aren't just important for the social link, but also what literally makes the protagonist stronger. You can see this quite clearly at the end of Persona 5, where, to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, the only characters who are always at Joker support are the ones where he's maxed out their Confidant. The only exception to this, of course, are the Phantom Thieves. Phantom Thief Confidants are a step away from this game's formula, as they're already friendships of virtue by the time you start them. The reason I bring up Persona 5 at all is that it's a game that does a great job at showing how you can build friends. Really, there's only 2 key ingredients. The first is to just listen and be attentive. The most important one, however, is to simply put in the effort to reach out to someone. Over the last 2 years, I've made an effort to see people more. Now that I'm an adult, seeing family hasn't been nearly as simple. As a kid, I'd see them on the whims of my parents, but it's not like that anymore. I have my own job and car now, and free time is just different from how it used to be. I love my family though, so I go out of my way to see them. I try to see my auntie and grandparents once a month, and I even visit my family members who moved out of province at least once a year. Many times when I make contact, I'm not exactly excited for a visit, but I never regret that choice, because having that social time is essential. Recently, I chose to reach out to someone who wasn't a family member. For over a year, me and Josh had reminisced about a friend we lost contact with after we graduated. This friend was Pedro. Both of us got along with him, and he even had overlapping interests with us, but our paths never really crossed enough to keep a report going after school. That was until I messaged him about my trip to Japan, and now he joins Josh and I for our workouts. Being able to lift weights with yet another friend is a really fun experience, and Pedro is someone who I think can easily become a friendship of virtue in a year. A big part of why I think this is that he'll be my final roommate that I'll be moving in with. Now that things have come that far, I find myself wishing that I did what Joker did so effortlessly and just keeping in touch with these people. I recognize that many people don't have family members to practice these steps with, or old relationships to reignite. I understand how lucky I am, but if you're also lucky, then I'd highly suggest that you will go out there and make some friends. If you already have them, then I have absolutely one thing I need to make clear. Don't you ever let yourself take your friends for granted. Little Busters had the Herculean task of succeeding the legendary CLANNAD as Key's next visual novel. I have yet to read the source material, but based on the adaptation it received, I would say it's a worthy follow-up. CLANNAD is a story about the importance of family. Tomoya's struggling relationship with his father, his romance with Nagisa, his found family with Nagisa's parents, and the bond he grows with his daughter are all things that push that theme so strongly. Little Busters is a comparatively less ambitious story, but I think that was the right call. In my opinion, the only way they could have followed up a story about family is by making one about friendship, and that's exactly what it does. Little Busters follows a group of 5 childhood friends. Kyosuke is the eccentric, yet confident and calculated leader of the group. Masato is the muscle-loving comic relief of the group. Kengo is the stoic and serious member, with an emotional and eccentric side hidden beneath the ice. Rin is the honest and blunt one, but is very shy to those outside the friend group. Finally, Riki is our protagonist. He's kind and gentle, but bad at facing his problems head-on. Throughout the story, it's Riki's goal to indulge Kyosuke's desire of creating a baseball team. In doing so, he befriends various different girls who, in standard Key fashion, all struggle with issues that Riki needs to help them overcome. As the first season follows this formula to a T, I will not be discussing it in this video. I will instead be spoiling its second season. If you haven't seen Little Busters yet, you absolutely should, as it was the inspiration for this video as a whole. Otherwise, here's a timestamp to when the spoilers end, as the rest of this video will still be very important, even to those who haven't seen it. In a twist reveal, it's shown that the plot of Little Busters was started after a traffic accident. The only 2 members to go unharmed in the incident were Riki and Rin. While they could have saved everyone before the fire went off, neither of them had the mental strength to do so. Kyosuke wouldn't let that be an option, however, creating a never-ending time loop from before the incident. The existence of the baseball team wasn't just a whim he thought of. The baseball team was Kyosuke's attempt at forming the weak Riki into a leader that could save the lives of many. Refrain perhaps has my favorite use of one of my favorite questions. Do the ends justify the means? To Kengo, that answer is no. In the first season, we saw him be so closed off and isolated because of how much he disagreed with Kyosuke's plan. Sure, it could work, but at what cost? The cost isn't Riki, but instead Rin. Rin is someone who's gradually able to grow out of her shell as she makes various new female friends, but Kyosuke's plan involves him separating her from her friends to strengthen her. When this plan fails, another time loop occurs. Kengo is furious, and Kyosuke is depressed. All both of them ever wanted was to be with their friends forever, but circumstances from beyond their control have torn them apart. That is, until Riki does what Kyosuke did in their childhoods, and brings them back together. What I find so interesting about Little Busters is that while Kyosuke's plan did eventually work, he still got something very wrong. Kyosuke made the mistake of thinking that independence is strength. This mistake cost his first attempt at saving his friends. Riki, however, learned a different lesson. Independence isn't strength. Friendship is strength. A strength he uses to prop up Rin when the tensions are at their strongest. Right before the final time loop ends, Riki gets to see the tears of his friends as they put their lives in his hands. With each successive goodbye, Riki is forced to come to his most uncomfortable realization yet. This whole time, he's been taking his friends for granted. Most people say that friendships come and go, that circumstances will happen that lead to a friendship's inevitable departure. I find this idea to be deeply discomforting. I remember how I felt when my teacher gave me and Andrew that lecture. At that moment, I knew confidently that I wouldn't ditch my friends for any reason. There may be a point where we live elsewhere, working overtime to support a wife and kid, but even under that circumstance, I'd at least give a call every now and again. While not exactly related to friendship, the divorce rates have been steadily increasing, both in my home country and in the country you actually know exists. Perhaps when so many people fail to treat marriage with the strict loyalty it deserves, it makes sense that even more people would feel the same way about friendship. In the first season of Little Busters, Riki would regurgitate his backstory in every arc, about how blessed he is to have his friends, and how Kyosuke saved him. However, when it comes time for Riki to do the same for Kyosuke, he hesitates. This is to say that maintaining a relationship is a mutual endeavor. I remember when I quit my first job at the grocery store. I made 2 really good friends there, and I did genuinely try to keep in touch with them after I quit. I eventually stopped though, since I realized pretty quickly that they weren't willing to put in the same level of effort into contacting me. I'm glad I tried though, the same way Kyosuke did. Thankfully for Kyosuke, things did work out for him, and Riki was able to reach out to him. But life doesn't always go that smoothly. Regardless, I'm glad Little Busters was able to reiterate this message to me, as it was the anime that made me realize the most important thing of all. I will never take my friends for granted. More than ever, I really hope you enjoyed this video. This is the first time since I came back to this channel that I decided to make significant changes to the structure of my videos. In my latest community post, I described how fed up I felt with the idea that my videos weren't getting any better. Hopefully, with all the effort I put into this video, those expectations could be shattered. As a result, I hope the more free-flowing writing, more intentional editing, expanded music choices, updated Patreon plugs, and end credits are to your liking. I can say they are for me. It's a testament to how quickly I was able to get such a long video out when my life has been ridiculously busy lately. I just started work at a new job, which has been making a much better wage, and I've been looking for houses to rent. Life has been pretty stressful lately, but working on this video has been a ton of fun despite that. With that said, I couldn't be more thankful for you getting this far into the video and hearing my thoughts on the process. I don't have much else to add, so I'll see you all later. I hope you're as excited for the next video as I am.